Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tool and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Jason. Thanks for tuning in today. Financial Issues is a stewardship ministry, and our goal is to help you be a good steward with everything that God has trusted you to manage. We do that by helping you to defund darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy and encouraging you to be a joyful, generous, and obedient givers. We are going to get to some of your questions today, later in the show. The ones that have been sent in on the website, but the phone lines aren't open today. We've got sort of a packed show. We've got Jason MacDowell, my friend and colleague, coming on to discuss taxes with us. We've got Craig Haugaard coming on later in the show. So hold your calls. Be ready to call in early tomorrow morning. We also have encouragement coming from the Word of God from Proverbs 3:27. Well, everyone is hard at work right now getting their 2024 taxes, getting all their documents together, getting their tax returns prepared. And, 2025 is the last year that we're going to have clarity on how we will be taxed going forward, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is up for expiration at the end of this year. So the future of our taxable, our tax structure is being scrutinized and debated by Congress and by the media, by all of the experts right now. Well, Jason, welcome. Thanks for coming back and joining me on Financial Issues again today. Give us a rundown of what exactly our elected representatives are discussing right now.
Absolutely. So we've spoken a lot about DOGE and their government spending reductions or cuts that we're seeing. DOGE has just recently gotten access to the IRS, which is good in the sense of just shedding a light on what's going on there, but also give me a little bit of hope of a favorable treatment to any tax reform or extension of the TCJA. So we're going to talk about today just a lot that the campaign trail has proposed, that specifically Trump and some others, and what we keep hearing repeated. That's a good time for me to see what they really want to push, because it's consistent and Trump tries to do what he says, at least from what I'm following him with. So we're going to go through what's been proposed here with the TCJA. Now, currently right now, it's a talk of the TCJA being extended and then the temporary parts being made permanent in a hopeful case. What parts those are, we'll know a little bit more as more information comes out. But we want to see a lot more permanency than just an extension, say, to 2030. We want this to move forward indefinitely, hopefully, in the case of what Trump has been talking about. Currently, GOP is in a standstill, though, as far as the House. Some want to cut the taxes and others want to use it as a spending opportunity. So it kind of, we have the same old there until they get the whip cracked. So let's go over a few of the possible changes that Trump has been talking about on the campaign trail. The first is the rates and brackets. That's something very similar to the TCJA, of course. Rates and brackets were moving in a certain direction, a little bit broad. It would grow a little bit more with inflation, essentially, each year. The standard deduction also was growing a little bit more, but Trump has been saying something repeatedly that we'll come back to, saying he wants to increase it. Well, he did increase it with the TCJA the first time. It pretty much doubled the standard deduction, which was interesting. So we'll come back around to how much more do we think he could increase it. The next one is removing the cap on SALT or state and local taxes. Think of your mortgages too. So that's more for like the blue states, the itemizers, if you will. We'll discuss that a little bit more as well. Increasing the child tax credit. J.D. Vance did propose an increase of $5,000 for each child. I know Seth might like that. I know I'll enjoy that too. The campaign didn't confirm that, but that is something I'll take any day. And then the exemption. So these are really the focal point of the household portion. There's more, we're not going to talk about the business side, but exempting tips from income taxes, exempting Social Security benefits from income taxes, and exempting overtime pay from income taxes. So we're broadening the whole category of exemption for income taxes. That's kind of going in line with removing federal income taxes. So we'll talk more about that. The last line item is the auto loan interest itemized deduction entry. So for the itemizers, allowing the auto loan interest to be added to.
That'll make Ford happy, who's worried about tariffs blowing a hole in the auto industry.
Yeah, it'll be addressed. And then, of course, the last one, of course, is cutting taxes on domestic production. So this is more the business side, but it's being labeled as made in America. So tax reductions on just making things in America, which I think always should be talked about, because that will come around to the economy side of things. So.
Yep. So, I think the cuts do need to be made permanent, because it doesn't really make sense to have this constant renewal hanging over Congress's heads all the time. Are we going to, we've been talking about the renewal of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act since it was passed back in 2017. And, my opinion is if Congress wants to change it in the future, they just come up with something new. Don't let something good expire, something that you could get consensus on, you could get everybody to agree on. Let's just leave that in place until you can find something else that everybody can agree on. Cutting taxes can potentially initially decrease revenue into the Treasury coffers, but cuts from DOGE, increased revenue from tariffs, the ones that materialize, the future GDP growth, if all of these things materialize, can help to offset and the decrease in revenue that we might get if we actually let taxpayers choose how to spend their own money instead of letting the bloated, inept, inefficient government bureaucrats make decisions. If we can get GDP growth up by 1%, we often hear this concept of we can grow out of our debt. Well, if we can get GDP growth up by 1%, with taxes staying the same, we could potentially see a $3 trillion increase to tax revenue over the next 10 years. So you get taxes lowered, or at least keep them the same. You put people back in charge and control of how they spend their own money. The government shrinks. The private sector grows as jobs come here because of the low corporate taxes and decreased regulations. Expenses drop and productivity increases because you have full-time government employees getting paid to work from home with second jobs because they're spending little to no time at their government job. This is how we grow ourselves out of debt. So, Jason, give us some details on some of the components being debated.
So let's start with the standard deduction. That's a good topic. It's basically the amount that we don't pay taxes on. So for married filing jointly for 2025, it's $30,000. And then for single filers, there's $15,000 there that you don't pay on. Trump keeps saying he wants to increase it. So we keep repeating it. So I'll just propose this idea of how much do you want to increase it, Trump? Is this something where you want to double it again? That kind of, we'll come back around to my hypothetical with removing federal income tax by using standard deduction as a possibility. The other is itemization with SALT. The state and local property taxes are capped right now at about $10,000. Trump wants to remove the cap, but realistically, it's probably going to land somewhere around a cap of 100. There will still be a cap. So when Trump talks about removing something completely, sometimes I have to look back at how the government ends up actually acting out, and it's basically the IRS looking at, hey, there's a cap to certain things. So some economists would believe that this would help increase GDP as the SALT cap creates a burden on labor income as well as housing investment. There's economists on the other side of the fence that sees it as a negative. So there's, it's kind of split down the middle there. So that helps with the itemization side of things. As far as the Social Security tips and overtime, exempting these from income tax purposes are leading to a common theme. It's just removing more sources to be considered for federal income taxes. So there's a certain areas we could look at as far as Social Security specifically. Majority of Americans on Social Security, 85% of the benefits are taxable as income. So not taxed at 85%. It's just that 85% of their total gross amount that comes in is taxable at their income level there. And that leaves 15% tax-free. So would that eliminate all of it, meaning that all of it's essentially tax-free? That's kind of my question of where he's going to get that scenario. Or is it only so much of it is going to be, again, tax-free from there? So
I think it would help too if we got all the 150-year-olds off the Social Security payroll too.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you fix the fraud, right? We find out all the fraud. We fix Social Security and the payment system by all what DOGE has kind of figured out from there. So the same goes with tips. Do we really think that all tips are going to be completely tax-free? I personally, from my own opinion, probably not. It'd probably say up to a certain amount, tips are going to be tax-free. What that amount's going to be should impact Americans overall that do get tips. But imagine everyone filing with all their income as tips. there's probably going to be something there that looks through it. So
yeah, and I've heard the impacts of eliminating taxes on tips is going to be minuscule too, as far as the national budget goes. Now, it's going to be very impactful for people who depend on a good part of their income as tips, and that's going to help them, and I think that's important. But as far as the overall impact, I think it's not going to break the government.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend working with when these new tax laws come out, working with a tax professional or a program where you can talk with somebody. I know some people, a lot of maybe partners and listeners do their own taxes and stuff, being able to talk with something, especially about the overtime proportion too, of claiming what's overtime versus not overtime. We can see a lot of that. Would that also have a cap to it as well? Probably, because a lot of this could probably be abused. Right. And that's kind of where we want to stop there. So this kind of leads me to the hypothetical scenario I've pretty much had.
Hey, Jason, we got to pause here. We've got a break coming up, but would you stick with me? Come back in this next segment and we can wrap up our thoughts here on taxes and so many things. I mean, these are the financial issues that people care about. We're all preparing our tax returns right now, and we want to know what we can expect going forward, because many of us think beyond just the year that we're in. Stick with us, folks. We're going to take a break, but
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
My name is Reagan Gardner, and I am in the 4th grade. Last year, I wanted to be like everybody else. I thought I had to act different, look different, and be different to be cool. When I joined Crossroads, I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Help reach more kids like Reagan with the hope of the gospel. To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
Would you join Financial Issues and Preborn as we celebrate heartbeats? Your tax-deductible donation of $120 or any amount will provide free ultrasounds, counseling aid, and the gospel message to a mother in an unplanned pregnancy. Become a heartbeat hero and give monthly to save lives over and over again. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to financialissues.org and click on the Preborn banner.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in today. I've got my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell here with me today, and we're talking taxes. So back in 2017, under the first Trump administration, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we call TCJA, passed. And when that happened in 2018, the very next year, when those rates went into effect, the average family of four earning around $75,000 saw an average $2,000 savings on their tax bill. So, wow, $2,000 savings. Can you imagine if we just eliminated the income tax altogether? Can you imagine how much money you'd have? Well, you wouldn't have to imagine it. Just go look at your last tax return and see how much you paid in federal taxes to see how much money. I mean, take a look at that number and don't look too long, because you're going to find yourself fantasizing about what you could spend that money on. And it probably wouldn't be Sesame Street episodes in Iraq or some of the other, $1 billion that we've spent on DEI programs and things like that. So, Jason, let's talk about how this scenario of eliminating the federal income tax, is it even a real possibility?
Maybe explore a big what if scenario, but how would Trump be able to eliminate the federal income tax? A common theme from the proposed cuts to, or the extensions or the additions to this new tax bill that could come out, is adding just an exempting broad categories of income. So the theme's there, that he's trying to sort of corner or at least pigeonhole federal income tax out. So how would he actually do it? Well, the simple answer is just to repeal the Act of 1913 and the IRS is gone forever. Boom, done. But it's only that simple, right? So let's
baby steps. We got to take baby steps.
Average salary let's look at the average salary of the household. This is arbitrary in my mind because it depends on where you live, what you do, how much you're making, all kinds of things. So it's just using an average. So the average salary in the U.S. for 2024 is $63,795 with a simple lookup. We'll just use that number arbitrarily. Many factors will go into that, but if Trump proposes a larger standard deduction increase, let's just say $65,000 for married filing jointly and not even cutting it in half, just a $35,000 for single filers. We'll focus on the married filing jointly as a household income. Well, that's more than what the average for 2024 is. And sometimes I feel like the government does look at like these average numbers and tries to make a simple cookie cutter approach to satisfy everybody. So I feel like this is where my mind is going with this. What if he just made the standard deduction so high that it does eliminate federal income tax for a majority of Americans? Not all, wouldn't be businesses. Thereuld be a lot of other people excluded out of that.
They'll be making the rich pay their fair share.
Yeah, exactly. So there will be in some cases, but he likes to look towards the middle, the middle class and the working class too. So it still would dramatically affect, but also have the increases to it every year, like how the TCJA has been since it's there. So I like to look at that as a way of what he may want to do. So we may not get necessarily a complete repeal of the IRS or complete removal of the federal income taxes, but it seems to me that he's trying to make it a way so that you just don't have to pay them for a period of time. Hopefully it's permanent, maybe it's temporary. I don't know. So
that would be a monumental achievement to get rid of the income tax. And I think, like you said, we'd have to take these baby steps, and there's little steps that we can take, and I think it would depend greatly on the work that DOJ is doing in getting government spending under control, because you start to bring government spending down, you eliminate 30 to 40% of government dollars spent on, administration and waste. Like, you can get these things done way cheaper in the private market. And I just kind of did a quick estimation of, if we did get rid of the income tax altogether, how much more money does that put in Americans' pockets? Well, the average middle class household earning $70,000 a year would keep $7,000 to $10,000. So $7,000 to $10,000 is about what most people making that $70,000 pay in taxes. So, it would be much higher than that for, higher income earners. But can you imagine if that amount of money was then able to be either injected into the economy, with people choosing what they spend the money on, or maybe redirected to their savings? We wouldn't have to worry about the depletion of Social Security anymore. Mm-hmm. So, do you have any thoughts to kind of sum up what we've been talking about here? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, FICA taxes. So we'll add in the Medicare and Social Security fact that DOJ is going through. If things can be made more efficient and certain taxes for that, maybe they don't have to take as much, because the output has been terrible for the payment processing. So I'm hoping the same thing might happen with the FICA taxes, because they're looking at all of those, making those more efficient. So not just federal income, but those as well. So I'm hopeful with that.
Jason, I'm on here. Seth as well. I think Shana's sound went out, but folks, we're getting her right back in just a moment. Shana, can you hear us now?
I can.
Very good.
So I didn't hear what you had to say, Jason, but I'll go back and listen because my sound clipped out there. But thanks for being with me again today. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and all your great research. And we'll see you again probably next week. All right, Seth, we got some questions.
Yeah, let's do it, Shana. Always appreciate
up there.
Yeah. Always appreciate Jason coming on. It's good to have him. Let's start with Jared here. Shana, 58 years old. He's mentioning a specific company he had in his portfolio before becoming a partner. I'll let you mention it if you want to, Shana. And decided to keep it at 2% of his portfolio since then, in light of some of the factors we had mentioned in the partner commentary this past week. Now he's saying, I'm wondering if I should sell that and replace it with your new addition to the buy list instead. That'd be MA63. Are the two pretty much the same, or is there some difference I should be aware of? Thanks for all you do. What do you got for Jared, Shana?
Yeah, so they are very similar. There are some minor differences, but we don't follow the one that you have in your portfolio, so we're going to be following the other one. So what I would say is that you probably need to make a mental note that, if a sell alert were to come out about one, it's not going to be because of biblically responsible reasons, because it's just an ETF that tracks or that owns and tracks a underlying commodity that is neutral. It can't be non-biblically responsible. So you would just need to make a mental note that if we come out and encourage you to sell MA63, that might be one that you sell. So it's very similar.
Awesome. Good stuff, Shana. Let's jump over so we got a call on Friday from a listener named Mark from, I believe that's Mississippi. He was not he wasn't interested in coming on the air, but he wanted us to address this question. It's on FI3. He's saying, how does it function? Because it goes up and down. I'd love some more insight on this. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm not sure if he's talking about the price on the ETF or the yield on the ETF. I'm going to just assume that he's talking about the yield because the price has been pretty stable. If you look at a chart, it looks, it looks up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you zoom out and you see where it's going up and down, it's going up and down between $91 and $92. So that's less than a 1% change in the price. So the price has been very stable, even if you go back, a lot of years. The yield, on the other hand, does vary. So this ETF invests in short-term treasuries, like 1 to 3 months. It just so happens right now that the yield on this is somewhere around 5%. That's because, we've had this Fed interest rate cycle in 2022 where the Fed increased rates 11 times over 14 months, and the types of investments in this ETF tend to follow that yield. So the yield is very good right now, yielding a little bit better than CDs. So when and if we do see interest rates come down, we can expect the yield on this to come down because, if you look back, and I'm assuming this is what he's talking about, that's gone up and down has been the yield. But for now, I think it's a good, there's not historically been a lot of price volatility on this. So I think it's a good place to hang out and grab some yield until other opportunities materialize.
Awesome, Shana. A quick one here before our stewardship to sell for FP31. She says, I haven't sold it yet, but there's another one that's right now at $22, bought it around 23, almost 24, and it's down about 8.5% or 8.25%. I thought we were guaranteed. So why sell this one?
Yeah. So guaranteed is a strong word, especially when you're talking about any type of equity. So what you're expecting is that you get 25 when and if it is called in. So you can hang out there if you want, but what we did is whenever we made the sell order, we did the math that even if you sell for a loss at this point, you get a tax benefit if you're in a taxable account, and then you get an opportunity to improve your yield by going into one of the other ones. So you can keep it if you want. Because there's been a sell alert issued, you won't get any future guidance from us on that particular one. So you can, great thing about this program, it's a do-it-yourself kind of strategy, and you get to make all of the decisions. Well, folks, let's transition into our stewardship verse of the day, which comes from Proverbs 3:27. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. When it is in the power of your hand, to do so. Seth, what'd you think?
Yeah, I love this one, Shana. I think it shows us, and this is actually, by the way, a verse that I've tried to preach to my children a lot also, to teach them, this concept of, if you have the opportunity to be a blessing to someone, why withhold that? It can be such an act of good stewardship and honor to God when we have the power to be a blessing to someone else, and we choose not to do that. That can really bring shame to the name of God and to our testimony. So we should really be keen to look for opportunities to be a blessing to those around us for the glory of God, as God has first done to us, Shana.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I kind of have a policy when it comes to my kids, and when they ask for certain things, it's like, if I can say yes, why say no?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah.
We can really apply that, I think, to our giving, is if we have the ability to say yes, why say no? Let's not withhold good from someone when it is within our power to do so. So we'll just encourage you to apply that principle in your stewardship, in your giving, and be a good steward of all that God has given you. Yep. Well, folks, if you are listening on an outlet that carries only the short version of the show, we wish you a farewell for the day. But for those of you who listen on the longer format, maybe on podcast, Apple, Spotify, maybe on our phone app, maybe on social media, we want you to stick around, because we have more financial issues to come, including Craig Haugaard, who's going to talk to Seth about egg prices and what you need to know there. Well, I'm your host, Shana Burt.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states, or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Did you know that an unborn baby's heart will beat an average of 120 times per minute? That precious sound is the sound of life. This Valentine's month, would you join Financial Issues and Preborn as we celebrate heartbeats? Your tax-deductible donation of $120 or any amount will provide free ultrasounds, counseling aid, and the gospel message to a mother in an unplanned pregnancy. Become a heartbeat hero and give monthly to make an impact and save lives over and over again. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, baby. Or go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org and click on the Preborn banner. Become a heartbeat hero and give monthly to Preborn as they seek to save lives.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com. That's reachOurschools.com.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, folks. It's good to be here with you today. Hey, we are live this morning, by the way. Hope you enjoyed our segments with Shana and Jason. I know it's a holiday for many of you, President's Day, but we are live on Financial Issues. No better way to spend your President's Day than with us. So thank you all for joining us today. I am grateful to live in a country like ours where we have such a unique form of leadership that has tried to be replicated by so many other countries in the world. And just my opinion, Sam, but I think our country does it the best. So
I think that's a good opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a solid opinion.
Yes. So a happy President's Day to all of you. I'm thrilled. I've got Sam Case with me, and we also have Craig Haugaard joining us for a live ag report today. Craig, let me set this up here with a article that we looked at last week. So beef is now cheaper than eggs by one key measure for the first time since the 1980s. Apparently, 1 gram of protein from an egg now costs about half a cent more than the same from ground beef. Obviously, brother, egg prices have been skyrocketing as of late, and so I'd love to just kick it off with that on this spike in egg prices. But as I do that, let me say also, Craig, thank you for joining us. I know you're not feeling well today, but Craig is basically a hero, as you all know. So, yeah, we just appreciate it, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I would never want to miss an opportunity to visit with you guys.
Absolutely, man.
You're right. And we've talked about it in the past, obviously, Seth. But this bird flu is continuing to just really raise havoc with the industry.
Yeah.
So far this year, and we're less than 2 months into 2025, but we've had nearly 28 million birds that have had to be killed this year already because they've detected bird flu in the flock. Last year, for the total year, was just shy of 51 million. You start to eliminate that many birds, especially amongst the egg layers, and it has a pretty dramatic impact on prices.
Yeah.
We saw prices a week ago. I haven't seen the data yet for this week, but in the prior week, we saw egg prices at the farm gate go up by just a touch over 24 cents per dozen. To a record, as you said all the time, kind of a record high.
Yeah.
And probably not going to see that back down anytime soon. Now, what I think will be interesting is that other countries handle this differently than the United States has. In the United States, as soon as we've seen an outbreak, we've just eliminated the whole flock. In other countries, they've been more... They've kind of gone the inoculation route where they've given inoculations to the birds. They actually, it's fascinating. I think they actually do it in the egg. So they inoculate that bird while it's still in the egg. Now, we have this big debate in this country about when is a human. But apparently you can inoculate chickens in the egg, which I would say was an embryo, and we can go down a whole life rant there, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's funny that we can do that. Late last week, there's a company, probably the largest global animal health company in the world, company by the name of Zoetis, got permission to start proceeding with an inoculant here in the United States for bird flu. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see the impact of that as that moves forward. But clearly what's been going on with the rapid spread of flu, and then we've seen it moving more and more into humans. We've had about 70 human cases now. Just 4 of them ended up with hospitalization. The last one was Ohio here about a week ago. There was a gentleman hospitalized. But I think this new approach maybe that we're taking, it's going to take some time to turn it around, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the meantime, we're doing a lot of things from a biosecurity standpoint. The co-op I'm with has a fairly large feed mill, and every truck that delivers feed ingredients to our mill, we're stopping them before they come on the property and sanitizing the tires, and the same when you're delivering feed. Those flocks are taking a lot of precautions to try and keep it out. The problem is that a lot of it is traditionally spread by migratory fowl. So, it's you can't stop a wild bird from flying over your property, and and that's where a lot of it seems to be coming from.
Sure, absolutely. So, Craig, you had mentioned that in the millions of birds needing to be put down in the last couple of years. What is a normal level where there's not a bird flu that's been going around, just so our listeners can understand how serious this is and why that is indeed what's driving up those egg prices. What would be a normal level of birds that would need to be put down in, say, a year?
I don't know if there is a normal level, but I'll be honest with you, outside of bird flu, I'm not aware of the situation where they come in and do entire flocks.
Right. Right.
And I'm sure some people out there more versed in poultry than I am, but whenever I've run into this in the past, it's always been associated with bird flu.
Yeah.
So if in fact that is correct, then you could argue that, these 57 million birds that we've killed here this last year would still be alive and productive while they actually be in the food chain, but would have made it through to productivity if not for this flu. So you start to take those out of production, and at the same time, just because you've killed the birds doesn't mean you can bring that facility back into production, because you've got the concern of that virus or lingering there in the facility. So you have to go through and sanitize the facility. It's going to have to sit empty for a certain amount of time before you can restock it. And so it kind of slows down the whole food chain coming back up to speed as well. So a couple different factors there, I guess, Seth. But definitely it's created a problem, and it has slowed down the fix of the problem.
And Craig, now moving kind of to that fix, as you were saying, what do you think it's going to take for egg prices to get back down to a manageable level? Is it just the eradication of this bird flu, or is there something else that can be done, you think, while this is still happening?
No, I really do think it's going to have to take getting this bird flu under control. Yeah. And we've seen kind of not really a seasonality to it, I guess, but you see some ebbs and flows. In 2022, we had the first big outbreak, and we killed about 58 million birds that year. Well, the very next year, 2023, it dropped down to less than 22 million. Still a large number, but, a considerable drop-off for what we'd seen in the past. And that had a lot to do with migratory fowl and that type of thing, how infected birds flying overhead. I think, if we can get this inoculant that works and is effective, it'll turn around pretty quickly. The nice thing about poultry is that the reproduction rates are very, very fast. So you can get that up to speed relatively quickly compared to trying to rebuild a beef herd, for example, and that type of thing. So I don't know what the time frame would be, but I am encouraged. They've used this inoculant similar to this in other cases. Probably most recently here in the U.S., the same company devised a bird flu vaccine that they used on the California condor. So, if it's an endangered species, where they were, in that case, U.S. Fish and Wildlife went ahead and started inoculating eggs. And in effect vaccinated the California condor to protect them. So, we've seen it used in the country. Now it's just a matter of whether they'll use it in commercial poultry flocks. And it appears that that's the way we're heading.
Sure. Now, Craig, speaking just for a moment for our farmers and ranchers in our audience, or maybe folks who are even just stepping into this a little bit, what are professional farmers and ranchers doing to cope with this, and how might you advise the farmers in our audience to try to manage these skyrocketing prices? Obviously, my guess is we probably don't have any farmers who have the cure for the bird flu. That would be great. But what would you advise us to do in the meantime?
Well, from a farm perspective, it's kind of interesting because as you look at the cost of egg production, the one thing that has gone up is the cost of biosecurity. We're seeing some huge increases in dollars that people are spending to protect their flocks. But if you look at just the productivity, when you look at what it costs to feed that bird, a week ago here again, corn costs, soybean meal costs, total feed costs came to a total of 29 cents for every dozen of eggs produced. And then they have total costs at about 61 cents. And so if you keep your flock alive right now, the actual cost of keeping those birds producing is relatively inexpensive compared to the amount of money that you're selling those eggs for. So at this point, if your flock is unaffected, the game is just to keep them healthy, really take care of biosecurity and keep them from being infected. And you're going to be making some pretty good money right now.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those deals where it hurts the consumer, and it hurts the people obviously whose flocks are infected. But if you're staying away from infection, it's a pretty good time to be raising eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, Craig, we appreciate you so much, brother. Hey, real quickly here, because I know we're coming to the end of this segment. Many of our listeners obviously have been praying for you. Give us a quick, health update here, brother. How can we continue to pray for you as you're in recovery mode from your several surgeries last year?
Yeah, the surgeries, I guess still, there's just still a lot of inflammation associated with them that it's been real slow. I guess just continue to pray for that. And obviously I've picked up some lung infection thing here that I'm kind of struggling with. So I appreciate prayer for healing there as well.
Absolutely.
So really appreciate the listeners and their prayers. My wife and I both really appreciative.
Amen, brother. Well, Craig, the feeling is mutual, man. We appreciate and love you so much. That's Craig Haugaard, folks, our financial issues ag reporter, joining me today on the program. Craig, thank you so much. We'll be right back, folks, after this break. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
This Valentine's season, we invite you to join Financial Issues and Preborn in a mission to save babies and transform lives. Your donation of $120 can make an extraordinary difference. This amount represents the average number of times an unborn baby's heart beats in a single minute. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to financialissues.org and click on the Preborn banner.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, thank you for your prayers for Craig. I know whenever he says that on the interviews, believe me, he really means it. He loves the Financial Issues family, and boy, we love Craig. He does a great job. Always love the chance to get to interview him. Speaking of a great job, you all did a fantastic job last week with our Preborn Heartbeat campaign. Preborn is tallying up the final numbers for us, so probably won't have those for you on today's show. We'll try to announce that tomorrow, but the Financial Issues family, just so generous, and so I appreciate you all so much. You did a wonderful job. Thank you so very much. Let's move now here, folks, to the markets. Markets are closed today because of President's Day, but on Friday, let's see how they finished the week. So they were relatively muted throughout the day. A relatively busy week last week that ended pretty calmly. By midday, the indices were right near the flat line, and by late afternoon, similar trajectory. The tech-heavy NASDAQ was leading the way, and that's how they finished. By Friday's closing bell, the S&P was basically flat. Technically, it was slightly under the flat line. The Dow Jones was down about 0.4%, and the NASDAQ was mirrored that in the positive, about 0.4 positive. Winning week for the week, though, still. The Dow Jones finished the week ending on Valentine's Day up almost 0.2%. The S&P 500 finished 1.5% positive, and the NASDAQ was the big winner of the week, over 2.5% positive. So that's what we looked at there. Again, markets are closed today for the holiday, so they will reopen again tomorrow morning for pre-market trading, and then at 9:30 Eastern Time. We'll see what that looks like there to start this week. All right, Sam, let's get to some headlines
Seth.
here. Yes.
Hey.
Hey.
I ever tell you I can't stand President's Day?
No.
I really don't like it. I want to celebrate George Washington. I don't want to celebrate Franklin Pierce and all these other guys, Woodrow Wilson. I want to celebrate Lincoln and Washington, not all the presidents. I don't want to celebrate Joe Biden.
That's exactly. It should be Good President's Day or Effective President's Day. I really do love, folks, the reason why we celebrate it in the third week of February is it's sandwiched right between Washington and Lincoln's birthdays.
See, and that makes sense.
Those two presidents might have been two of the best that we had.
So if you want to call it Washington and Lincoln Day, I'm all on board.
Absolutely.
But all this other stuff, you got quite a few bad eggs in there, and I don't know if they deserve a day.
For sure. Very, very well said, Sam. Speaking of presidents, we did get an interesting headline over the weekend on Trump's reciprocal tariffs and what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is continuing to kind of communicate to the public about it. What can you tell us?
So, of course, Scott Bessent is defending Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs. This is kind of part of his job, is to defend what the president's doing on terms of the economy. But yeah, he came out during a Fox News or Fox Business, I guess, interview on Friday, responding to the criticism that this is going to be bad for the economy. He says, no. This isn't tariffs for tariffs' sake. What this is Donald Trump trying to set an even playing field. He says that Donald Trump wants a, quote, frictionless global trade environment. To recap here, Trump announced the plan on Thursday, under which Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Trump's global trade rep Jameson Greer will be evaluating tariffs on a country-by-country basis, with a full report being released on April 1st. Here's Bessent with more of those details.
The April 1st deadline is for a study that the Commerce Department is doing on global tariffs that apply to U.S. products, country by country. And also, we're not just looking at tariffs, but we're looking at non-tariff barriers, the local content, things like that. And we're also looking at currency manipulation. As I've repeatedly said, the U.S. has a strong dollar policy, but because we have a strong dollar policy, it doesn't mean that other countries get to have a weak currency policy. So, we're going to come up with what is the equivalent of an index, what I would call a reciprocal index, country by country, the outstanding tariffs, non-tariff, the trade barriers, and currency manipulation. And President Trump is serious about negotiating this.
Yeah, so there's Bessent outlining what's going to be happening with these tariffs. So as I said, this is going to potentially start as early as April 1st, but the question is going to be, are some of these tariffs even going to go into place? Because now that we have this gap between the time the tariffs were announced and when they're going to go in place, are many of these countries just going to get rid of their tariffs altogether and create an equal playing field so they don't have to feel the wrath of Donald Trump?
Yeah. Well said, Sam. I really appreciate that. It brings up to mind the conversation that we've talked about on the show before about American exceptionalism. Trump has championed himself as a president who is pro-American exceptionalism, and I do think these tariffs might be, at least in Trump's thinking, the pathway to that. Trying to level the playing field and hold other countries accountable. I'm not opposed to that, Sam. I'm a fan of American exceptionalism. I think that's a good thing. There are a lot of people, in our country who might say, oh, that's not fair, or it's just America being the big bad bully. I don't think that's the case. I think it's not only a good and virtuous thing, but even I would argue perhaps a biblical trait to be patriotic and to be about your country. Of course, understanding that, our home is in heaven. Our home is in the new heavens and the new earth. That's our true citizenship. But we've been given a country to steward down here until the Lord returns. And so to not try to steward it well and make it great, I think it's an act of bad stewardship. I really do. So if you look at it this way, I really do think you can fall in line and really be supportive of this,
Yeah, as long as Donald Trump uses these wisely and isn't just slapping tariffs for the sake of it, which again, I don't think that's what he's doing. Yeah. But you could see this potentially get out of hand and snowball into an all-out trade war and prices go up 60%. Yep. Again, I don't think Trump's going to be doing that. He's a businessman. He knows what he's doing with that. But there is always that risk that this could get out of hand theoretically.
Absolutely. So we will have have to see how this plays out for sure. And Sam, you brought up that would, of course, be an act of, I think, bad stewardship of the leadership of our country, if Trump were to do something like that.
But we're already seeing Canada and Mexico begin to cave on this stuff. I think Trump, with these latest tariffs or potential tariffs, is really thinking at targeting the EU and trying to get them backtracking some of their stuff. So I think there's a real possibility that will happen. Also, I saw Nissan is now considering moving some of their manufacturing to the U.S. out of Mexico because of Trump's tariffs. So you're already seeing the drip effect of even the possibility of these tariffs.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good stuff there, Sam. Speaking of controversial topics, as we're on tariffs, another controversy has been the downfall of DEI, which is not controversial for us. We love it. Yeah, it shouldn't be controversial at all, but it is for a lot of people, including our friends over at CNBC. Apparently, CNBC is whining about the end of DEI. What can you tell us about that?
At least one of their authors is, that's for sure. This woman wrote something like a 3,000-word article on Friday called "As Target and Other Retailers Drop DEI Programs, Black Founders Could Face Tougher Battles to Get and Stay on the Shelves." She says, as more retailers like Walmart and Target drop their initiative efforts to find and fund Black-owned brands are also at risk. And she goes on to tell this story about how, I think it was Sephora, gave $100,000 in grant money to a Black perfume maker to promote her stuff. And they're saying, oh, well, now Black entrepreneurs aren't going to be able to have that additional leg up and they're going to suffer for it. And all I can think from that is that seems pretty racist. It seems like what this author at CNBC is saying is that Black entrepreneurs can't make good enough products on their own to be successful without the help of these big DEI grants. Is that what you're hearing from that, Seth? The same thing that I'm hearing?
That's exactly what I'm hearing, Seth. That's exactly what I'm hearing. And we hear this over and over again regurgitated with the people who want to promote DEI, especially in regards to race. The rallying cry seems to be we're automatically assuming that white people are starting ahead of Black people or indigenous people or whoever it is. Well, the question you have to ask then is why? They will probably argue, oh, it's because of institutionalized racism. But really, I think what they're actually saying is, that Black people need extra help to be able to get to the same place as white people. Sam, I agree. That's horribly offensive. It's horribly offensive to Black owners. They need extra help. They need extra hand-holding. They need extra money. I hope that non-white people with common sense will hear this and be offended by it, because this is actually offensive to them. It actually is, absolutely. What we need is common sense business owners who can just make a good product. Sam, a good historical example of this, I didn't know much about this woman until recently, actually, when I discovered her on a kids show that my kids were watching. But Annie Turnbull Malone was one of the first Black female millionaires in this country. And she worked, she sold, hair products specifically for Black women. And so she found, a market that was needed, and she was able to make a lot of money doing that and did a really, really good job at it. And my guess is she probably was not thinking, oh, I'm so far behind the white people that I have to, I need extra help. She just put her foot to the grindstone and worked hard and was able to really do some amazing things. Check her out. Annie Turnbull Malone is her name.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It really is fascinating, Sam, and I think that's just one more example, folks, that we see of this mindset that has overtaken corporate America, which in its core is actually racist. See, they accuse us of being racist when really that is actual racism, is giving certain races special favors and special treatment. Not only is it racist towards the races that you're not giving it to, but it's actually racist towards those races that you are giving it to, because what you're telling them is, hey, you're not good enough to be a good business leader on your own. Let me help you. You need the help. You're obviously ill-equipped. That's not what we're trying to do here.
And listen, there's a way to do that. Let's say Sephora really thought that this was a good product, regardless of the person's race. If they just thought this was a good product, why don't they just promote it themselves? They think, we're going to get a niche in the market. Exactly. We're the only guys who know that this is a good perfume, so we're just going to sell it and put it in the front of our stores. We don't have to hand out some special government DEI grant that's connected to this. It's just its own thing. It's good business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sam, you hit it it right on the head. It's all about being in the business of doing business well. That's what we're trying to do with this ministry, folks, is we're trying to use our influence to make companies consider the novel idea of just being a good business. Who would have thought that that's a novel idea? But apparently in our world today it is. We're here trying to encourage these companies, just be a good business. Be a good business, and you will get investor dollars and you'll get consumers as well. So that's what our strategy is all about, biblically responsible investing. We want companies to just be in the business of business. So great to be here with you today, folks. I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. We'll be back tomorrow. Shana will be live 9:05 Eastern time. It's when you got to get your call up. Remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. Let's be good and faithful stewards with it. God bless.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.